Very young.
Yeah. So yes, the concept of utopia basically talks about a better place, a better future, and individuals have got their own ways of looking at the future because our orientations are definitely different. But what we are trying to do is to use the concept of utopia, trying to paint a picture of what we want our city to be like, as an opportunity for a group of artists from different backgrounds, different disciplines to come together and collaborate on a project that basically gives us a realistic imagery of what that future should be like. So the reason we are doing this, why utopia? Well, personally, I feel that the concept of utopia is somehow missing from our national dialogue. I mean, from childhood, we've seen a couple of sci-fi movies, but they're usually from Hollywood. So it's the whole idea of what the future of America is going to be like, what the future of Europe is going to be like. But we hardly think about what the future of Africa is going to be like. In this case, Accra, which is our capital city. And so it's towards a bigger goal, which is at the end of the day to imbibe that whole idea of utopia into the national dialogue, and through several ways. But how we are trying to do it is that we want to take certain landmark locations in Accra, and then even though this is made up of architects and urban planners and designers and and all that, we don't want to look at it from a very technical point of view. We want to look at it more like an artistic project. So it's going to be based on recent developments in technology, transportation systems, and there are predictions about what transportation is going to be like. So we're looking at trends in transportation, we're looking at trends in fashion, we're looking at trends in architecture and how people live and all that, and putting all these things together from different points of view, from architects, from fashion designers, from graphic designers, illustrators, people who do comics and all that, to sort of create this imagery. And I don't know if you get a picture from what we are seeing here, but these are just things I gathered over the internet. These are just images of how people have done stuff that sort of paints a picture of the future. So this here, as you can see, is a combination of buildings from like all over the world, from Dubai to London to all that. But just as a quick demonstration, in this case, this is a photo of somewhere, I think in London, where they've gone through a process. So I just want you to see how this has started from just a photograph, which we would need, in this case, photographers to do. So this becomes a work of photographers where we go around the city and look for areas where we think would fit for the project, and we get areas of the shots, we get shots of the area. So in this case, this is an integration of other buildings that don't really exist there into it, and it goes on and on and on until like in this case, you realize that in this case they added this futuristic kind of transportation system. I don't know whether it's like a train or whatever, but you see how it goes basically. And at the end of the day, they arrived at that. So what we are trying to say is why can't we create an image like this of Accra, of Kwame Nkrumah Circle, of Accra High Streets, of the coast, and why can't the younger ones, or even us, start seeing our own city in a more utopian way, a better place, because what this at the end of the day would achieve is that you'd find that kids can now look at a better Accra and then they strive towards it, because if there's no vision, there's this professor I met one time. He came to Tech, he gave us a speech, and he's Professor Henokwadu. I don't know if any of you have heard about him, but this is a man who was doing sci-fi, comics in the 80s, and he's Ghanaian. He's done all these watercolor paintings of Accra and the Kole Lagoon and all that, and that was like years ago.
But quite futuristic renderings, or just
futuristic with flying cars and
can we see them? I mean, can we find
If
them?
you can go online, you can just check Professor Accratopia, it will pop up.
But the images are there?
The images are there, yeah.
We're online, because even when you finish, we'll show the echo video.
I'll show them. You know, and the last time I met him was at a conference in Golden Tulip. It was a housing conference. It was about, you know, low-cost housing and all that. And he had showed up with a model of Accra. I mean, the first time I've ever seen a physical model of Accra. You know, almost like 2 times this stable. He's built Accra.
Where is that model? Where is that?
No, where is the model?
Why is the model? I don't know. Wait, one thing I found
Do you know
out
this
by-
professor? Are you friends with him? I mean,
I've met
can
him
you?
a couple of times, and I think anytime he sees me, he remembers that he's met me before, but we don't really have
Well,
that.
we should
I have
definitely
his
reach out to
contact
him
though.
if we're doing this because.
Yeah, sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, he should come. Like, if we have any event at the end, he should be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and you know, he made
And
a
let's
statement.
find that model.
He made a statement. He's like, you know, a vision has to be seen. I mean, it sounds very simple, but usually what you find is that when our politicians, our leaders are talking about their vision, it's all volumes of, you know, writing and all that. And exactly. He has this whole presentation which he calls Visions of Ghana, and it's basically, well, I call it, you know, a physical development plan for this country on a silver platter, because he seems to have done it all, you know, from branding to, and I don't want to even start talking about Prof, because it's a whole speech altogether. But yeah, I mean, we are younger, we have better tools. I mean, well, not necessarily better, but well, we could say better tools.
Yeah.
You know, we are more exposed. We have, you know, so we should be able to do something even more compelling. And I think that once we are able to start creating some of this imagery, what will happen is that the older generation who are a little, you know, tired and probably lacking ideas now can now start, you know, seeing that, oh, there's really something in these guys, you know, and it won't be a question of always, you know, just talking abstract about what we want our city to be like, but we want to show them what we want it to be like. So at the end of the day, what we are going to do for the first phase of this thing is that we are going to produce images. So images like this. Then once we've gotten these images, we'll take it a step further and see how we can get these images to the doorstep of everyone. So however we can get people to see them at any opportunity that we get, we try and exhibit them. So we either organize an exhibition purposely for this, or if there's an event that we can make this a part of, we do that, and then, you know, we see how this goes. Maybe it might just spark a whole new, you know, discourse about, you know, what our city should be like, and maybe it will be those that they'll come to, you know, come up with ideas of exactly how these things can be brought to fruition. But so what we are doing is we are looking at Accra in the year 2050. We don't want to put limits on what is possible, because nobody knows what's possible in the year 2050. But one thing we do know for sure is that we can predict based on trends, fashion trends. I mean, when you look at futuristic movies, you realize that, you know, there's a certain trend running through futuristic movies, sci-fi movies, and as time goes on, you realize some of these things actually happen. You know, they are quite predictive, but at the end of the day, we find that they actually happen. Why can't we also do that here? You know, let's try and put all that together.
Password?
So yeah.
No, I'm not.
You
But
see,
then-
if you could get an animation like this too,
Yeah.
there will really be something.
I mean, it's all very possible, not to cut you, but you know, we want to start, I don't like to say start small, but we want to find out what we are capable of doing right now. Sorry? Oh, okay, sure.
I was raising my hand. Because I feel like the basic idea we all get at this stage.
Yeah.
So let's just jump into specifics.
Yeah.
And also in terms of what you just said, like we should start small or something, or to see what we can achieve. And I admit I'm always, speaking of utopia, I'm always the utopian and the idealist, but I think anything is possible. So let's just start with what the overall goals are and work from there, because I think we should think about what's, in an ideal scenario, what's the best possible case we want, and then focus on that. And if we end up lower, we end up lower. But I say that mainly because I think you mentioned it'd be nice to have renderings or something. And I feel like this is, or animations, and I think this is the kind of thing where ultimately the quality and the amount of output that we get is a function of how interested people are and how good the stuff is. Because it's like, if you take some awesome pictures, which you already have taken, and take even more awesome ones, that gets someone else energized. And then if they make a really cool rendering, that gets someone else excited. So I think anything is possible. So let's just focus on what we want to do.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm curious from everyone's perspective, and I mean, I would ask you maybe in a way to, because I think you originally had the idea, and I mean, we also just talked for a while downstairs.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, yeah. So, what would be the best possible outcome for you, in your opinion?
The best possible outcome would
Yeah.
be to do
Because we're designing
like
this thing, we're
yes,
designing the activity.
yes, and well, this idea of utopia is something that's, well, I personally intend to pursue further and further and further to see how it goes. Best case scenario, make a movie out of something like that, you know, where we actually have a setting where people can relate to, you know. So you're seeing a movie where someone is standing at Kwame Nkrumah Circle, and it's Kwame Nkrumah Circle. The old buildings are still there, but you can see all these new buildings. But you know, that's depends on how much I can get from as many creatives that I can meet as possible, those who are interested in. Because I can't do everything that will make that
So
happen.
in your mind, is to make a movie about Accra's the utopia of Accra's
Yeah.
utopia.
Yeah, but that's like the sort of the end game. I mean, and that is towards several other things. But so we start with images. If we can, we transform them from images to animations, like what we are just seeing, you know.
Okay.
Then from there we go on, and then we might just end up doing a real urban planning and urban design scheme, you know.
Also, the end game would be the clients will walk up to us as a team and say, hey, why don't you put 1 or 2 buildings here? So we put some money in our pockets and we get to
Sure. I mean, that is something that might come along, but we can't necessarily say for sure that we'll get that. You know,
We can.
I think
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, okay.
Who else has
I mean,
it's,
it's-
like, so you're saying to take this idea of a utopia and convert it into real things.
we can do a website, you know, we can like put it out there in magazines and stuff, get some people to sponsor, and people will definitely call us. And so, you know, we like your designs. How come take a look at my building for me? Yeah, so a firm could be started, or an individual could take my building and do it, or you know, we need to make some money too.
What about you, from your perspective? What's the perfect, most ideal outcome?
I was thinking a little more small scale than movie discussion. I was thinking of anticipation. I was thinking of, like you were saying, reason and awareness of where we're going. Because I don't think we are going anywhere as far as the country, as far as the plan. So I was thinking a lot more about images, maybe a comic strip, something that shows, something that just shows Accra, the future, or something that you can relate to as now as well. Also.
How are you?
This is Adam. He's architecture student as well.
Hi, Adam.
Are you Adam Says? Yeah, that's okay. I only know about the Twitter.
On Twitter.
It seems to be very popular. So you can grab a chair. There's a chair here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like listening to this, even when you talked about this on Thursday night, and then as well, like seeing the videos, seeing the renderings, hearing you talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
My ideal ending would be that this would like energize like a movement. Do you know what I mean? Like starting out like really small, like maybe it's just us who were sort of like starting on this, working on like taking photos, blah blah blah, but that we can showcase this. Like we talked briefly about trying to showcase some of these images at the Childhood Street Art Festival.
True.
As we were talking, I was even
As
thinking
art,
like,
showing them as art.
showing them like these are the opportunities, right? This is future potential. Like even like at Golden Tulip when they do these adventures in the diaspora, like maybe having an event around showing that, like finding different opportunities where we can showcase this, and then like having that, getting that to sort of like engender like action. Do you know what I mean? If it's like people are like, I want this, how do we do this? And then like organizing a movement to sort of like make that happen. And maybe it's like, I guess to me it's like, I like the idea of a vision because it gives people an idea of what's possible, and then people start thinking about, okay, what like actionable items do we have to do in order to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And well, when I said the end game, maybe I don't know, maybe I didn't say it correctly.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, to spark that chain reaction for
And then as
several
well, like
opportunities.
get people to act on it and like if it's like working with, even getting like government agencies interested, like if it's the AMA, I feel like sometimes even if you get the key people interested, then, or at least get their support, like, okay, yeah, you can proceed, then that can push things along too.
One other thing maybe is, so last year in London at the South Bank Centre, they had a month-long festival called Africa Utopia.
Which centre?
South Bank Centre in London. That was specifically on this idea of like, no one ever, like everyone always talks about Africa as dystopia, like, but there's no vision for what an ideal future would be like. And so there was a whole series of events. It was like all different kinds of art forms. So there was serious panels of architects and stuff, but also music and art and that kind of thing. So I mentioned that just as like, there's other stuff going on internationally around the scene as well, and I know there was a lot of energy and connections that came out of that probably would be possible to piggyback off some of those, even in terms of like funding or that kind of thing. But also just that maybe that would be one way to present all of this work would be to have like a 2-day or whatever, like a Accratopia festival with different things and have it be.
Yeah, totally agree.
So you're proposing that after this we have a presentation there as part of like the next African Utopia perhaps?
No.
Our version of this year.
Yeah, and same do like an Accratopia version as like that would be one possible way of getting out that exactly.
Yeah, totally get it. That's interesting. And so yes, so I mean that's why I'm really glad we are all here, because there's a little something that everybody can put into this. I mean, I have absolutely no idea about funding stuff like this. All I know is that I have abilities that I can create stuff on the computer in 3 dimensions and all that. So some of these ideas I do very well at putting them together. I'm also very sort of passionate about organizing creative people together, because I think it's when we meet and then we have, dialogue, we discuss some of these things that things actually get done. And I don't believe that one person can do anything on his own. So that's why we are even here in the first place. So whatever anybody can bring on board, we just have to make sure that this, like you were saying, this becomes a community where we keep each other informed about what's going on, and then we get as much support as possible from everybody, and then see how this goes, because there's so much we can achieve with this. I mean, I think cities are like the platforms for creativity. I mean, whatever art, whatever you are into, you need to be in a city to make it happen. It's only in cities that things. Why is she smiling?
I want to propose in terms of we talked before chain reaction. I was telling about, for me, everything, I always see everything in the context of you put an input into something and then you get an output out, but that output becomes an input into another thing. And so I think this, to me, seems like a chain reaction. I mean, I think even if at the lowest level, we just make the images and we put them up and it's fun and they're cool, we get something out of it. But I agree with Michael as well, that I think that our ultimate goal should be to build Accratopia.
Yeah.
And it may be a 10-year-long project, but we have 10 years. So here's one suggestion of a couple things we think about, and this is just ideas, but I don't know even the logistics. It's cool that, Martin's here, he knows something, Victoria also, you know people as well in the festival, and I think that what would be cool is that, I think because the festival is about art, and it's often our own fault as architects to exclude ourselves from art, that if we can make architecture as art, if there's a way that they can allow us to display it somewhere, in a very, it doesn't be a big deal. I actually think sometimes small is better. If the images are really amazing, and we had funding from somewhere, it could be cool to print them really big. But I think even if we printed them really small somewhere, it's like sometimes in a gallery, it's nice. You have the small art and you just come right and look at it. Yeah. I think that could be really cool. And again, we can brainstorm. I said postcards or art display, because maybe we could display them as an artwork somewhere if that worked with how the art, I don't even know how it works. Or it could be cool if we printed, and I'd be happy to print these myself, a limited number, a relatively small limited number of postcards, where we just have them and you can either have them around or give them to people who seem interested, and the front could be image and then the back could be wouldn't it be great if Oxford Street looked like this in
Right.
2100 or something,
Yeah.
and then you have the URL of the website.
Yeah.
So it's an advert for people who are interested, and you could even maybe ask them to give you, like 50 pesos or something when they take it. But you mentioned T-shirts. That could be cool too. And then also, I don't know how easy it is to print them here, but stickers. Stickers are cool too because you can have a small picture of like Oxford Street in the future, and then
Yeah.
some kid puts it on their notebook, and it's just a way of making the images get out.
Yeah.
So that seems like a relatively achievable first pass. And then you mentioned, and then I think you and Victoria people also mentioned like doing something with Joado's Africa AID thing. And I'm sure that's very straightforward. I think that at minimum, we just wanted 10 minutes, which is what you said.
Yeah.
10 minutes as a warm-up act. I'm sure he wouldn't even, like, he'd be like, of course. But I think we should aim even higher than that. I think we should do a whole session on it.
Yeah.
But that would require us to have at least half a dozen to a dozen images, so that if we took 5 or 10 images, or 5 or 10 minutes for each image, you could have an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think we should take that as our goal, and then because he's in with Golden Tulip, we could display the images in the Golden Tulip for that month, and then you get lots of people to see it. That seems very achievable. I think it definitely has to live on a website.
Definitely.
Either it's your blog or it's the
No, I think
what's it called?
I'd rather we created a blog for just
Okay, or
just
that.
this project so that we can always go there for it.
And I think even if I think it's a good idea to have the blog, but maybe we can copy it also onto Behance,
Sure.
since it's grew out of Behance as a
Sure.
way of, because these are the kind of images that Behance likes. But I don't think it should live just on Behance. I think it should be a blog, copy it to Behance. Then I also wrote under Africa. There's a conference on on architecture that Africa sponsors in Lagos.
Okay.
And the deadline for call to papers is, I think, the end of August or September 1st. I know I'm already submitting something, but I think like you or someone could submit something on this, and I'm sure there'd be a good chance, especially if you were just to say, what is utopia? We don't think about utopias in Africa, but we should, and we're thinking about Accra as utopia. I'm almost 100% sure it will be accepted, especially if at that time there was already an image or two that you could append to text. And then that would be an opportunity in Lagos in December to display it,
Okay.
which would allow you to take it even outside of Ghana. Then another one which may or may not be interesting to you, but is that I told you about the project Meetup.
Yeah.
We're doing, basically, those of you, we're doing a